Hello, everybody. Welcome to Avalara Next. We are super excited to see you all here. I am Priya Pulavari. We have the senior leadership today here with us from the Shared Services Organization. Next to me is John Jebsek, our VP of Engineering. Hey, John.
Hey, Priya. How you doing?
I'm doing very good. How are you, John?
I'm doing great. I'm super excited to talk about data today. I'm looking forward to this chat.
Yes, indeed. And we have Venkat here, our principal data architect. Hey, Venkat.
Hello, Priya. Thank you for having me. Glad to be here at Avalara Next.
I'm super glad as well. Today, we will be talking about our data platform and how we evolved our data platform as we followed some of our best practices. And we're going to follow like a roundtable format. So John, would you like to kick us off?
Certainly. So Priya, I was doing a little bit of retrospective thinking right before this. And, time flies. It's hard to imagine. I actually have had the great fortune of celebrating my 10-year anniversary at Avalara earlier this year.
Oh, wow.
It's crazy, and to think about all the things that have changed over those 10 years, right? It's really amazing to see how we've grown as a company, how we've transformed our architecture. But one thing has remained constant ever since day one, and that is Avalara has a big, hairy, audacious goal of being part of every transaction in the world. And
do you mean every transaction, every financial transaction?
Every financial transaction, every compliance transaction. I mean, we are building the global compliance platform to help our customers be successful in managing all their compliance needs. So, I mean, yes, imagine all of those financial transactions happening all over the world, right?
Wow.
This very minute.
That's really interesting and challenging.
It's huge. And the crazy thing is, for each one of those transactions, we have to manage data. Right. And as with many companies, data is one of the most challenging aspects of solving any business problem. And we have, maybe a slightly unique scenario in the fact that we have two major use cases that we'll touch on today. One of which is, we provide tax calculation services for our customers, right? And obviously, these are real-time tax calculations that are happening in a financial workflow. When you're buying something online, when you're checking out, we are calculating tax in real time. And we have to store data in high volumes of transactions for each one of those financial calculations that we're making. And then on the other hand,
we are a part of the last mile in every transaction in that case, John?
Exactly, right? So I mean, think about that. Like our customers, and this is why, our data and our services are so vital to our customer success, because they can't check out without that, right? Or if we're charging the wrong amount of tax, that impacts their bottom line. And then, obviously, when, we can't just stop there. There's a reason we calculate tax, right? We calculate tax because customers have to remit tax. Uncle Sam's got to get his money, right? So when we think about that, in many cases, the returns and reporting function is dealing with large aggregate sets of data. And so we have, that's a completely different problem that we're trying to solve outside of the real-time transactions over here. So it creates a really unique challenge of use cases that overlap. So Venkat, I know you've been here for a few years. I'd like to give you an opportunity to kind of take us on what your perspective is on how we manage that data at scale.
Absolutely, John. Thank you for having me today at Avalara Next and be a part of One Orange team. You have been talking about the largest complex problem that we are solving to our customers, and the complexity of data and data management. Yes, it is a complex problem to solve, especially on a large scale volume. And ultimately, data is the central nervous system that flows through the entire enterprise. The way enterprises store, process, and analyze the data is undergoing through a massive change, demanding high rates of throughput, low latencies, with an excellent data integrity and governance problems, with an ever-growing compliance and then regulatory needs. So when I joined Avalara 3 years ago, the company is transitioning through an evolving architecture, and innovation is constantly evolving to support our organic growth at our company. So so that's where I have been onboarded to build the next gen data systems and migrate the customers to the new data platform to support Avalara's mission of being a part of every transaction in the world.
Oh, wow. Part of every transaction in the world. Big, audacious goal that we have. I love this mission. To accomplish this mission, we had to establish a lot of best practices, isn't it? Let's start with performance. Venkat, do you want to touch on performance to begin with?
Absolutely, yes. So data platform should have some of the key principles and characteristics that we establish to follow our our customer needs. So performance is one of our key focus, which is also a principle of our data platform. Our customers are expecting to store and process their sales invoice data with higher throughput and with the low level of latencies, and also with the higher levels of durability, resiliency, and integrity. A demanding data in sales invoice platform that our customers are trying to store the transactions with the ultra low latencies. So we have to make sure that our systems are fully performant at the scale that we are growing organically.
Absolutely. And that addresses that one use case that we were talking about, right? So, in the situation where we're calculating tax, if you're in that shopping cart, you're ready to check out. If we're sitting there taking a ton of time to calculate that tax and to store that data, the end customer is sitting there, with a spinny wheel, and they're just waiting, and they may abandon that sale if it doesn't work, right? So performance in that case, you talked about latency as a key performance indicator that we measure and we observe. What are some of the other KPIs that we think about in terms of managing data?
Sure. So performance in and itself doesn't have any KPIs or KPOs. It is really not a measurable thing. So we need a measurable outcome of our KPIs, which we also advertise to our customers to measure the exact performance characteristics of our system in 24/7. So some of them include the sales invoice latency of our small and large volume of transaction at the P99 level. And also we do measure the delivery of ETL, delivery of our sales invoice transactions to our downstream systems. They depend on us because we provide our customers our customers take the reporting and returns from our downstream systems. And also we measure the concurrency of the users that hit our system, especially during our Cyber Week and the peak load times during our customers' promotional periods.
Yeah, absolutely. So you mentioned Cyber Week. So Cyber Week, for those that aren't familiar, it's what we call it's actually our cyber season. It extends from Black Friday and Cyber Monday, which are huge sales holidays in the United States. And it's really kind of grown into this idea that we need to be able to manage high performance at any point in time. We may have customers that hit us with flash sales when they go online and they do certain days of the week that they're doing sales, or these big time retail events. And obviously that performance needs to be managed at scale, which brings us to scalability. Priya, you want to talk a little bit about scalability as one of our other principles?
Yes, absolutely, John. Performance is super important. But scale, let's talk about scale. As we grow the business, scalability is super important for us. We think about scale from the get-go, right? From the design of your projects, design, implementation, all the way to delivery. Scalability lives through that entire phases of the project. And how do we scale to meet such large demands? So for us, some of the things that we think about is separations of concerns, loosely coupled systems, but tightly aligned teams and interactions. So to that effect, we had to do multiple things. Separate out our OLTP transactions from our batch processing workloads, and then the data processing pipelines, which handles huge volumes of data feeding into our data warehouse. So that's kind of how we think about scale from the get-go, right from the beginning in everything that we do.
Yeah. And Priya, that sounds pretty complicated and complex, but simplicity is actually one of our core attributes at this company for everything that we look at. And we apply that same principle to data as well. Venkat, would you like to go a little bit into how we think about simplicity in our design?
Sure. Same as performance and scalability are very important key characteristics of the data platform. Simplicity also. The design philosophy is simple things scale, right? So, but when we are building a systems that support the planet scale growth, and it's hard to balance the complexity of the design with the performance, scalability, and durability needs. So the minimalization is the guiding philosophy at Avalara. Simplicity reduces the operation opportunities for errors and improving the uptime, and delivers the reliability while serving as a foundation for the platform. So it helps for the adoption and of our developer productivity. Our system should be simple enough to scale and prove the resiliency along with easy and zero downtime based upgrades.
Absolutely. And, you know, I think back to my days as a developer, and we had, you know, the idea of don't repeat yourself. You know, when I think of simplicity too, as an organizational leader, is how do we roll out the support and the observability and the maintenance of these systems? If you're doing this on a global scale, you can't have you know, independent snowflake type solutions for each one. Being able to consolidate, build in simple architectures, repeatable patterns, and be able to train teams to be able to be experts in managing this is critical to be able to ensure that we're able to properly support these systems.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, resiliency is one of our core tenets as well, right?
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. Let's go into that.
We think about resiliency as well as we develop these products and systems. Resiliency in all facets that you can think of: people, process, and systems. We have 24/7 operations for all our systems. We collaborate with our sister teams, our operations teams, to be able to deploy with that resiliency in mind. So it's just not enough to deploy systems in productions and walk away. We have observability in place, monitoring in place, so that people can just keep an eye on it, so that it continues to operate the way that we want to operate. How do we do this? We have the right people, the right process with a 24/7 operation, and we want to really make use of our global teams as a business. And not only that, to add on to that, we have a fail-fast approach to everything that we do. The message is not to don't touch your systems, but if you do break something, go fail fast and fix it and move on and learn from that failure. John, so what do you think about resiliency?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, what you said there really speaks, you know, to some of the things that we put together in terms of how we build our teams. But, you know, I think of resiliency as well in terms of, you know, going back to the business needs, right? So we're in a situation where our customers are doing financial transactions 24/7, every second of the day. We're building global systems. Global finance doesn't sleep, right? And our systems can't either, right? So there are a number of systems that, you know, hey, we've got to take a maintenance window because we've got to do some patching, or we've got to apply a fix or deploy some code. We don't have that luxury. So there are some really interesting constraints that we have put in place. And this applies to how we think about resiliency in the technology choices that we make. We have to be able to use technologies where we can do rolling restarts and things of that, rolling patching and apply so that the systems don't go down. You know, we talked a little bit about how we actually apply software or actually we'll talk about it in a minute, how we actually apply software to ensure that we're creating minimal risk to our customers, right? And that we can put these changes live. It doesn't create an impact to the system. And so really interested in getting into that. But underpinning all of this too is, you know, and I got to put my little plug here for efficiency, right?
This is proper prime directive as for the business, right?
Right. So, I mean, just with any business, you know, obviously, a lot of people who are evaluating how do we take what we're doing here? How do we scale it? How do we bring the performance that we need? We have to do that. None of us have an infinite budget, right? So we have to be able to do this in a way where it's cost effective. And efficiency comes to, you mentioned the team earlier, Priya. So being able to ensure that we've got, when we're making changes, like if we need to scale our system for growth, that it's not going to take an active, you know, a huge active engineering to be able to do that, right? We want to be able to put the right processes in place where we can scale organically, and we can do this over time. And it's very simple to do, speaking to simplicity as well.
Right.
So I really like to think about, that. But to tie the last bit on resiliency, though, we had an example that we used. Recently, Priya, we went through and did this big project, a couple of years ago, and it's evolved over a period of time, and we made some pretty significant changes to the underlying architecture, and we equated it to basically performing heart surgery on a patient, but that patient had to be not only awake but perform their job duty, 24/7. And so, it speaks to that additional challenge of keeping those systems up. It speaks to all of those principles that we discussed earlier. And I'd love to talk now about, getting into, the principles of our data architecture evolution. How do we think about evolving the technology and making sure that we're, following those key principles? So Priya, to talk a little bit about recently we did a big SQL to NoSQL transition. Would you like to kind of go into that some?
Yes, John, absolutely. I love the analogies, the heart transplant, the nervous system, the data as the nervous system. Absolutely brilliant. Yeah, the principles of the data architecture evaluation, speaking of scale, we had some really transformational initiatives. We had to relook and rethink of every part of our stack to see how we are positioned for our global growth. So we looked at the different areas and different parts of the stack, including the database layer. We had large volumes of data. The business is growing at leaps and bounds. So we had to rethink to see if we are positioned well at the database layer as well. So Venkat, do you want to talk about that journey and that thinking of what we had to do at the database layer?
Certainly, Priya. Yeah, so as our business is growing, we have a requirements of elasticity, scalability, and we also have a requirements of dynamic data model. So our customers are asking us to store in a dynamic fields in their tax transaction documents. So we need to have a system that can able to scale according to the customer demands, like scaling up or scaling out depending on the volume of the traffic that we achieve during the cyber week and peak loads, right? So based on those characteristics, so we have evaluated the NoSQL systems, and which are a perfect fit for our use case, and we have transitioned our sales invoice transactions from a SQL-based systems to the NoSQL-based systems.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And when we were looking at some of these things, we had to adhere to do no harm, right? We wanted to make sure that we were not bringing systems down. We did this with zero data loss, zero customer downtime. I always say that one of the greatest outcomes of a big data project like this is that nobody notices anything changed, right? So Priya, do you want to go into a little bit about how we thought about moving that data and how we approach that?
Yeah, absolutely, John. So one of the things that we had to think about is to minimize our risks as much as possible, because you're dealing with like real life system, right? So we were brainstorming around various ideas, iterative deployments. Obviously, that was one of the areas that came into help, like anybody else would do. But the other approach that we also found it to be extremely useful is the cohort migration, right? So migrating workloads at small chunks at a time.
Oh, so cohort, that might not be something, a phrase that everybody's familiar with. Tell us a little bit more about what that means. Like, what is a cohort, and how do we think about that?
Yeah, so we have like a huge customer base. Think of a cohort as a small set of customers. So if you were to able to analyze your data and say that this is my spectrum of customers when it comes to our business, perhaps you can take the less risky customer base and then move them first, and then learn along the process from how the deployment went. And that was a rinse and repeat process. So once we had that learning, we applied our fixes and moved the next cohort, and then just kept doing that until we were able to move the entire data set. So that's kind of how we did the cohort-based migration that we are following for basically all over for other projects as well, projects and products as well. John.
That's amazing. I mean, it really goes to speak about reducing risk, right? Because we're, you know, looking at like test accounts, we're looking at very low usage, you know, customers and things like that. And then by the time you get to the more complex customer scenarios, it's a well-oiled machine. We've learned everything that could possibly go wrong, and we've got mitigations and automations in place for it. So that's fantastic. You know, obviously, another tenet of this was making sure that we didn't lose any data. And so in doing so, there had to be a lot of work around data consistency and data quality. Venkat, could you talk us through a little bit about how we thought about that?
Sure. As Priya talked about the cohorting is all about reducing the risk tolerance to a specific group of customers and mainly supported by the data quality, right? So if we are migrating the customer cohort from one system to other system, we have to have a data quality metrics that is continuously projecting us, showing us how our both source and target systems are accurate. Our system should be reliable and resilient to all kinds of failures, either intended or unintended failures, and should be able to handle smooth roll forward and roll backward actions whenever is needed. So before we migrate a tenant or a cohort from an existing system to the new system, we have to make sure that our data from both and source systems is 100% accurate, not just record by record, but we have to do a field level comparison of every field of every document in the billions of records. Trust me, it is really a hard problem to solve.
That's a lot of comparisons.
Yes, it's a big ask on the billions of documents, especially when the mutations are going on concurrently. So what do we do? How do we solve this data quality problem? So we build a comprehensive data quality framework and observability dashboards that will provide a real-time data consistency view of the source and target systems. So
you're talking about 100% data quality, Venkat?
Yes, 100% data quality with zero data loss and with the no mismatches or missing records. It's 100% is really, I mean, it's near 100%, but it's really a very hard problem to solve, because in reality, there are always edge cases that you see some level of discrepancy or mismatches or missing records. And how do you deal with those data quality problems? That's another interesting issue that we solve, right? If we don't want it to manually go and fix the records all the time. So we need to have a reconciliation system that will auto address these mismatched and missing records between these two systems. And by pairing the data quality and data reconciliation pipeline together, continuously finding the mismatches and continuously fixing those problems, making the data quality near 100% all the time.
Yeah, that's amazing. And what I really find fantastic about this is that we're able to, I mean, this helped to solve a problem about, you know, migrating data from one data source to another data source. But it's also, you know, helpful in all sorts of ETL pipelines and you know, asynchronous data flows, where you've got source systems and downstream systems that are working in conjunction, like our tax calculation data source and our returns aggregate data warehouse. So we're able to reuse a lot of that same technology approach for managing the data quality, the data consistency, and the dashboarding, the observability, the automated recovery, and the alerting on any sort of mismatches that are found in the system. So it's fantastic approach.
Great. Yeah, it's a team effort between various teams, collaboratively work together and help to achieve this consistency and quality. Kudos to the team.
Indeed, you know, people make all the difference with excellent folks. You can just bring in that magic. Wow, we have gone through a lot of stuff today. So John, do you want to talk about what are sort of the next things ahead of us?
Sure, absolutely. So, you know, we are still marching down that road of our big, hairy, audacious goal, right? Be part of every transaction in the world. We are continuing to expand into new tax types, into new jurisdictions. We are continuing to move into a more global footprint with our services. What we've come to find as we continue to optimize our services to minimize latency, we're finding that the biggest impact of latency is actually the distance between some of our customers and our data centers. So being able to actually continue to expand out our global footprint And for those of you attending this conference, we have a really interesting session on Edge that I recommend that you check out a little bit later to hear more about that. But you know, it's been a fantastic 10 years, and I mean it's just amazing where we've come. The next 10 years, you know, I don't know, maybe we'll be doing tax calculation on Mars. And we'll be part of every transaction in the universe. You know, who knows? We'll just have to see.
Yeah, it's universal data, universal tax transactions everywhere.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
super excited to see
less taxing, making our taxes less taxing, indeed.
Indeed.
I'm super excited really about where we are going, John, next. Wow, Mars, that sounds like music to my ears. And any other closing remarks? It's been a fantastic conversation for me, joining you too in this roundtable, and an absolute pleasure.
It's been an exciting journey for me as well, Priya, for the past 3 years. I'm really excited to see what Avalara is going to bring in the next couple of years to come. Happy to be part of that.
I would say for anybody that's interested a little bit more about this story, go to developer.avalara.com, check out some of our blog posts. We do have some blog posts on this topic as well. You know, thanks for spending time with us. Priya, you want to send us off?
Yeah, so thank you so much for listening to our roundtable here, and we welcome the questions. Please put them on the chat. We'll get back to you right after the conference. Thanks all again. Y'all have a good one. Thank you.
Wow.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.